Welcome to From Leads to Leases, a CCR growth podcast that helps senior living providers transform their complex challenges into opportunities. Listen in for stories from industry leaders, innovative strategies, and insights. And with our expertise, learn how to increase occupancy faster, guaranteed.
All right, welcome back to another episode of From Leads to Leases, the podcast where we dive deep into the senior living industry, offering insights, strategies, and stories from the experts at the forefront. I'm your host, Jerry Vinci, CEO of CCR Growth, here to guide you through the evolving landscape of connecting communities with the families and residents they serve. Today, we're joined by Jason Nieves, Vice President of Marketing for Alta Senior Living. Jason brings over a decade of expertise in senior living, where he's mastered the art of increasing occupancy, managing brand transformations, and implementing cutting-edge digital marketing strategies. From rebranding communities to driving growth in underperforming markets, Jason's work is helping shape the future of senior living marketing. So in this episode, we'll dive into effective data tracking methods, the role of digital marketing in senior living, and Jason's unique approach to engage multiple audiences, families, residents, and investors alike. So Jason, welcome to the show. We're thrilled to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Jerry. Appreciate it.
Yeah, this is going to be a good topic. Obviously, being a marketer myself, it's one of my favorite subjects. So I always like to start with a little bit of background information because I feel like everybody in senior living has such a unique origin story. So you've held multiple roles across operations, sales, and marketing in senior living. Can you share a bit about your journey in the industry and how that diverse experience has helped shape your current role at Alta Senior Living?
Absolutely. This is always a fun story for me to tell. And just since it's not the normal path for someone in senior living to take. So to go way back, I started right out of grad school, got my MBA at the height of the Great Recession in 2008, and had no idea what it was that I wanted to do. And so, not knowing, I started just diving in and figuring out, what career path is going to be recession proof, that, I'm early in my career, I can grow this, and no matter what happens, I should have a stable career. So fast forward, it kind of led me into an administrator and training program, became a nursing home administrator and did that for a few years. But really, the one thing I felt like it was missing with that was the fun, the excitement, the engagement with my residents. So kind of segued into senior living. And really, this has been a long and wild ride for me. I was a very hyper-focused administrator, executive director, and kind of all those different areas. And, I think that's what helped me grow in my career, is really kind of focusing on the sales and the marketing, whether it be me going out with my sales team out into the market and meeting folks, or going out on my own, whatever it took to kind of enhance occupancy and growth of the community is what I wanted to do. So I did that for a while. And then got the opportunity to be a regional director of sales and marketing, just with the focus that I had on it. And I really loved it. The one piece I felt like I was missing was kind of the digital side. And I could see it on the horizon. It was coming and it was going to be fast and furious. And it was something that we were either going to have to jump on the bandwagon and go with the flow of it, or get left behind. And so I had a great opportunity to start with a digital agency for a period of time, and got all of the different background in digital marketing and how it affects campaigns and how it affects the marketing of properties. But it was still in senior living, so I still got to experience it and kind of give all of my background to all of my clients. And so with that, that's kind of a long way to say, at this point in time, with it all being in my LinkedIn and everyone's online digitally, I got my resume there. The amount of recruiters and headhunters that have reached out to me has been pretty amazing. And that was certainly not the intention on my career path, but it's very hard to find such a diverse career path. Being in senior living, getting out of it, getting back into it. So it's been a wild ride, but I wouldn't have done it any other way, and it's led me to a great position in my career. And I can still say senior living is about the one thing that I know. is senior living.
I think all of that experience in digital marketing too probably makes you a bit of a unicorn when it comes to that role, because I feel like the industry overall tends to be a little behind the times. Like they're not early adopters when it comes to marketing or strategy. For example, some of the recent conferences I've been to, everybody's talking, they're so excited about AI. They're so excited about, personalization and measuring data and all these things, but they're still not sure how they want to implement it yet. Where other industries are like 3 or 4 years, they're like knocking out of the park with these. So I always feel like we're playing a little bit of catch up, and then there's like this education piece that has to come in. So the fact that you bring that knowledge to the table and you're already kind of like tapped into that pulse, I think that really says a lot about your skill set and why you've got headhunters chasing after you.
Yeah, it's been wild. I would have never guessed that was going to happen. But I definitely understand it. Yeah, I'm glad I can bring that to the table, and just take care of more seniors.
So one of the things you've said, and I've read a little bit online about Alta, is that they're known for their innovative and entrepreneurial approach. So you don't often hear that when we're talking about a senior living provider. So tell me about that. What is their entrepreneurial approach, and how has that kind of shaped your approach to creating and implementing strategies within the company?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, just to say this is, I knew when I got involved with another senior living operator that I wanted one that was going to be innovative, be on the cutting edge of things, because that's just who I am. Ready to embrace new ideas and new thought processes. So really, that entrepreneurial spirit has really empowered me to be able to bring to the table new and exciting ideas for the company. With a focus on innovation, we're able to prioritize kind of strategies that are not only creative, but also kind of data-driven, right? Because that's such an important part of marketing, right? Is making data-driven.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so making sure that everything that we do is having some amount of success. And I think being entrepreneurial and being able to kind of pivot when needed is going to be super helpful, not only for our company, but for any senior living company out there. And I think that's the one thing, and you kind of touched on this earlier, is that, senior living, we tend to think, we know how to do this. We know how to do senior living. There is no other way but the way we know how to do it. And I think, from the leadership down at Alta, we come to the table and we're like, what is new and what's exciting? What's out there, and what can we bring to not only our current residents, but our prospective residents, their families? So kind of that innovative culture, I think, has encouraged us to constantly grow, and ultimately have a mindset that really enables us to be kind of agile and adapt to changes in the market. That's a question that comes up frequently is, we have this problem. What solutions are out there? What have we not heard of? I don't want to go back in time. I want to go to the future. Where is this going, and what's a great solution for this issue that we're trying to solve for? So
Yeah. No, that's a great perspective for the company as a whole to have, and then for you to lead that endeavor for sure. I want to talk about data. That's such an important part of what you do, and I think in just current marketing as it stands now, one of our foundational philosophies around marketing and advertising is if we can't measure it, we're not going to run it, because we want everything we do to be tracked and measured so that we can absolutely say that we ran this campaign, we got this result from it. So it's either a financial gain or there's ROI behind it, whether it's financial, whether it's intrinsic like brand equity that gets built by the community. There's always something that happens from that. So can you explain how effective tracking helps improve marketing ROI and provide insights for targeting different audiences in senior living?
Yeah, definitely. Tracking is so essential when it comes to marketing and spending your dollars where they need to be spent, and not wasting a penny of it, if at all possible. So I think early on at Alta, it was something that we really struggled with, was tracking. There wasn't really tracking mechanisms. We had some call rail numbers, that's pretty standard out there. But the use of it was not efficient at all. And so really we leaned into, well, what do we have to do to track, everything from who's scanning our flyers, who's clicking on this, who's clicking on that, who's calling this number, who's calling that number. So the tracking mechanism really allowed us to get a clearer picture of what's resonating with our audience, right? And what drives that meaningful engagement. In senior living, we know that the decision-making process can be very convoluted and complex when making a decision either for yourself or for a loved one. And so, we started early on with utilizing QR codes and not just directing that QR code to the website, because that really doesn't do a lot, right? I want a link that tells me, okay, it was this flyer on this date and it deployed and we got this many scans on it, down to the tracking numbers on it. I want a unique tracking number for this flyer, because this flyer and this flyer are going to be completely different and we don't know what's resonating. And so I can't just say, here's a tracking number for flyers in general, because it doesn't get it, right? Like, we don't know, was that a successful campaign or was that not so successful? And is our audience really resonating with that? So ultimately, I think, effective tracking really empowers us to make those data-driven decisions, and ensure that, every dollar that we spend is somehow contributing to the goals of our occupancy and kind of brand loyalty.
I think the next level above just kind of tracking data now is like the hyper-personalization that's going into marketing. Is that something that you've delved into yet, where, say, for example, somebody comes to the website and they might have clicked on an ad for, say, independent living, but they're actually, like, when they're on the website, maybe they're looking at information that has more to do with memory care. And so then it's an opportunity for the organization to then retarget advertising towards that person more around memory care, even though they originally came in from independent living. So it creates this really cool ability to kind of pivot within the middle of a marketing strategy.
Yeah. So, we get into the details on all of these metrics. And to what you're speaking of right now is, how long were they sitting on that web page? Were they reading through everything, or were they on there for 2 seconds and they bounced either out of the website, or did they go to another page that maybe gave them the information they were looking for? So time on page is definitely a metric that we use as we're kind of evaluating the data. But that also helps us with kind of retargeting and with what we're going to retarget them with, right? Because maybe they did click on the independent living, but they navigated to, memory care and they stayed there. So certainly I don't want to start retargeting them with independent living items. Maybe it's more memory care focused. So we kind of take all of the information that we can get. And we've got, some cool tools that we utilize that would probably freak some people out about the data that we collect on folks. But I think, it's so important for us. The data is, anonymous for the most part. There's some tools out there that uncover that data that's anonymous too. But, I think it's just so important for us to really just give our audience the information that they're looking for, that they want, and that they ultimately need.
I think a big part of that too is any of the advertising platforms that you utilize nowadays, they're all collecting data based on the ads that you're running. So you have to pay to play. If you're not running ads, you're not going to have that deeper layer of data to be able to split test or A/B test one ad versus another ad, or one creative versus another creative. But when you start paying for placement, you can really start seeing and targeting and filtering down to very specific groups within that market and see how each one's responding. So I think that's the really beautiful part of digital marketing. And like you're saying, you're collecting anonymous data, so it's not like you're capturing everybody's personal information and then spreading it out across the web. It's really just user behavior and activity, but it really helps you get granular with these campaigns.
Yeah, I would say to anyone in your audience, and I'm sure that they've heard this from you before, is that you have to play with Google. You have to play with Meta. That's where your audiences are. And so you really don't have an option. I think early on in senior living, we tried to avoid it at all costs, but that's not the path forward.
Do you ever feel a sense of like dashboard overwhelm? Because I know with there being so many data platforms now, it's hard to kind of unify data. That's been a challenge across the board that I've heard from quite a few providers. And maybe it's just because they haven't come up with a system. It sounds like you've got a pretty well managed, organized method of how you go about marketing. But do you ever feel like you've kind of got too many dashboards and data sitting in different ones, or have you figured that out?
Yeah. So this one you're probably not, you would never hear from anyone else. But I, early on was overloaded with data and information just in various places. So I knew in order to be successful in my role, I had to somehow condense that and just get to the heart of the information I actually needed and kind of weed out the stuff I didn't or wasn't concerned about in my kind of everyday. So I actually built out an Excel spreadsheet that once my reports come into my email, they automatically go into this folder. And from there, my Excel sheet just updates. So it was a tedious process. And so, I haven't found a dashboard out there to answer your question very clearly, as I have not found a dashboard out there that gives me the information that I need on a daily basis. I've seen some cumbersome products out there that try to do it. But I think, my homegrown methodology has worked for me. And I think, it's helped us kind of grow and figure out, how to decipher and delineate some of that information that has been so difficult to manage because we use, I very transparently, we use multiple vendors for different things.
Yeah.
And in marketing, it's very hard to find a single vendor who does everything phenomenally well. They do very specific things very well, and then other things that may be, you're going to need to find someone else to do that. And so we're not afraid to do that, but it does make the data a little bit more cumbersome. So, but I've figured out a way to do it that works for me. But, I would love to find a dashboard out there that kind of incorporates all of our different, vendor data into one cohesive dashboard that I could utilize.
That's the dream. That's what everybody wants to find. But yeah, I mean, even the senior living specific tools that are out there, I find they're often limited, and they're basing it on assumptions, right? Like the entire industry tends to lean this way or that way, but you and your organization might need something different. So then can it be customized or do you have to do something like what I love what you're doing. I think that makes total sense to take just the bare bones data that you absolutely know that you need to make critical decisions within your organization and putting that into a space where you then can look at it and make sense of it. I think that's awesome. Yeah. That's brilliant. So kudos to you for figuring that out. You're also working with trying to reach several different audiences at the same time. So from families to prospective residents and even investors. So what's the most effective way in understanding engagement from those diverse groups? Maybe not the tools you use, but just understanding the engagement and how it differs.
Yeah, so there's definitely going to be kind of a diverse group of folks out there that are viewing and consuming the ads and the content that we put out. And so, it's important for us. And yeah, there's several different folks that we target. So whether it be a prospective resident themselves, family members, or investors. Sometimes it is investors that we're trying to, go after. So, let's stick to the two of, family members and prospective residents. And I think the key for those is there's not a one size fits all for both. You've got your residents who are concerned with kind of that socialization, like what's the experience going to be like for me when I get there? Are these, and we hear it all the time, these people aren't like me. So are these people going to be like me? Or that perception that they are like you? And kind of what that experience is going to be like and how they could thrive in an environment like our community. I think, when you go to the other side, we see it pretty often where, the family members are looking very late in the process where there's an urgent need that something has to change and it has to change now. And so, we've got to stand up kind of two different methodologies, two different strategies, one that goes after the prospective resident that communicate what life is like in our communities. And then the other side is kind of that comfort of knowing that your loved one's going to be taken care of. It's going to be a safe environment for them. So, yes, it's, we're going after the same resident per se, but the way we do it has to be very different. because there's not a one size fits all. Being in marketing and consuming as much content and ads as I do, I get to see kind of all of the other providers out there and some of the information that they deliver and content that they deliver. And some of it's very questionable, especially when it's being delivered to me in my demographic, right? I should be getting
Hold on a minute.
all of the information about, if this is my grandmother, my grandfather, maybe great-grandmother, great-grandfather, but I'm getting it like it's me wanting to move into the community, and it's like an immediate turnoff. And we don't want to do that. So, standing up, very unique, but very different, strategies for both is going to be huge. And where they're consuming the data is going to be different. So that's what I try to get all of my community to realize and understand, because they do see there are other communities, ads and things like that, and they're like, hey, why does theirs look like that and mine looks like this? So there's always a reason and a methodology behind it. We don't just put stuff out just to get more stuff out in front of an audience.
Yeah. I think a lot of providers, they cast such a wide net sometimes, especially across social media, that they're just hoping, to reel somebody in somewhere. So you end up somehow getting caught into that demographic, but they're not serving you the right kind of ad. So yeah, that is a little off-putting and questionable. And like, even me, sometimes I get, even in the mail, I'll get retirement. My dad has the same name as me, even though he lives in New Jersey. He's in his mid 70s, right? So I'm 45. I'll get these retirement brochures from the local senior living communities, and I'm like, hold on, I got some time yet. I'm not there just yet.
I would say that I'm gonna tell you a little funny one too, and this is an encouragement to your audience too.
Yeah.
Doing kind of those postcards and direct mailers, is I frequently get them from a specific property, and it's a huge senior living provider, and I have tried numerous times to get them to stop sending it to me by just calling into the community. Jerry, I can tell you, I've called at least 5 or 6 times. Can I tell you how many times I talked to a salesperson? Not one. Not one time. So if you're going to spend that huge investment of sending out direct mailers, make sure somebody's going to pick up the phone.
That's good advice.
It's as simple as that. Pick up the phone.
So one of the things that you've been successful with, which is a great feat, is driving occupancy growth in underperforming communities. Can you share some of the strategies you've implemented to turn these communities around?
Sure. Yeah, that's what we're all in this for, right? Take care of more seniors. So,
yeah.
That's the point. For me, when I get started in communities that may be having trouble, one thing I really try to do is analyze the market and figure out what's really going on. Is it a product issue? Is it a sales team issue? Is it a community team issue? Like, there could be a multitude of different things. So I really do try to, once I've kind of deciphered, is it an internal problem or is it an external problem? More often than not, it's going to be an external problem. So I can go after the market and figure out, how are we positioned currently? And what can we do to better position ourselves in kind of these markets? And so doing that kind of local market assessment or evaluation, however you want to term it, it's so important to understanding your competition and how you kind of place yourself in that market. So what do we have that maybe they don't have, or what do we do maybe just a little bit better than our competitors that we can expand on to our audience? So that's kind of first step. We also implement kind of digital marketing strategies to reach prospective residents and family members where they're most active. And so that could be on Google, it could be on social media, whatever the case may be. So really trying to make sure that wherever our ads are being placed is where our audience is. Because, being as nimble and agile as we are, that we talked about earlier, is that it makes it very easy for us to pivot. And if something's not working, we're going to get rid of that strategy really fast. Or adjust it. Maybe it's just an adjustment. We did some A/B testing. The strategy works, but maybe the ad content was not on par with what we needed. So, just trying to make sure that that's kind of hitting the mark. It's also important to work closely kind of with the sales team and make sure that their approach to follow-up is going to be key. Like,
huge.
Are they picking up the phone? Are they reaching out timely? And then also giving them as much of the information, not to overdo it with the teams, because they've got a job that they have to do, and we in the marketing team have a job that we need to do. So I don't like to overwhelm them with the data, but I do like to share some data with them to give them perspective, because a lot of times, me saying something isn't gospel to them. So they want to see the proof in the pudding, right? So showing them the data too, that, hey, look, this is what we did. This is what the result was. Or they think something was very successful because, maybe it's a print ad because their buddy who comes in every week comes into the community and sits down and brings them lunch. And they're like, I love this. This is so great. And this magazine works. And I pull the data and it's not working.
Yeah.
And they're wondering why we got rid of it. So, really trying to make sure that you're making them a part of it, and making them feel like they're a part of the process. I think lastly, one thing I really do want to mention, that, we've come a long way on is really kind of exploiting that Google business profile. I think it's such an underutilized component
Totally agree. Yep.
of Google and what they do and how they deliver results to their users who are out there searching. If you take anything away from this podcast, the one thing I can tell you is go in there and make sure every single thing is complete to some degree. Don't leave anything undone, any stone unturned there. That is it is a diamond in the rough sometimes when you look at some of these and you see, some of even the big providers who it's just bare bones. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's such a missed opportunity that I'll gladly capitalize on. But that is a huge way for folks to know that you're credible, that you're a trusted provider, and Google uses it in the same methodology and same fashion to make sure that you're a trusted provider, and that that result that they're giving to their users is from a trusted provider, and that they're getting good information, the information that they're actually looking for. So yeah, I definitely think that is a huge key. And I can tell you some of the properties that we had when I first came on had very bare bones Google business profiles, and the uptick almost immediately once they were completed, and very robust. And, that's something that we continue to work on a constant basis. At least 2 to 3 days out of the week, we're updating something on it to make sure that Google knows that we're active and we still want them delivering our results to our audience.
100% agree with that. I mean, the Google listing is the only other asset outside of your website that you own as a business that has enough information on it where somebody could literally be moving down the sales funnel without ever having to reach your website. They get to that consideration or decision phase just based on your Google listing alone. There's information in there. You can have floor plans, tour booking schedules, photos, videos, all of the possible information, reviews, testimonials, FAQs. Like, there's so many things that you can fill out that most people don't even think about filling out. And it's such a shame. Some of our data, we see for some communities, over 70% of their organic traffic comes through their Google listing. So for that to not be the primary focus. And the other thing too is that most communities we work with, over 90% of their prospects come from within a local search radius. So all of those people are searching locally. And when you search locally, the first thing that shows up on Google is the map pack. So your Google listing, right? So if that's not optimized, you're not showing up in the top 2 or 3 results, you might as well be invisible, The other piece with that is the reviews piece too. I mean, you notice if you do any search, senior living community in XYZ city, the top 2 or 3 listings, they typically have the most reviews or the highest star rating or both out of everyone else in the map pack. So if you haven't taken the time to really try to get at least, 20, 30 plus reviews for your community, then it's going to be hard to rank in some of the more competitive markets.
Absolutely. And that's something that we definitely try to push with our properties is kind of those reviews. And, we take on in behind the scenes that we take on, kind of updating the Google business profile. But, it's just, that is one area that you can almost see almost immediate results by making sure that that's up to date and optimized.
Yeah. Well, that's a great SEO tool as well, because in reviews, people can literally they're talking about the community. They're talking about the features and amenities of the community. They're talking about the location of the community. So that's all good ranking data for Google to then understand more about the community. So the more reviews you have, it just expands the vocabulary that Google has about your community. Have you been able to quantify your acquisition costs across the board from kind of like start to finish, or is that still something in the works?
That's something that we continuously struggle with, I will tell you. I think we get closer as the time goes by. And then it kind of goes sideways on us when we introduce a new strategy or a new, product out there. So I don't know. I think I think our partners harp on that very hard, and some of the investors want to know exactly what that number is. And so I understand it. We do a pretty good job. I say we get close. But I can't.
That's good.
I would never feel comfortable saying that, like, this is the acquisition cost. This is what we're sticking with.
Yeah.
I usually, if I'm asked that question, I usually give a range. It's somewhere in here. I can say confidently, but yeah, I think that's a pain point for many people.
Yeah, I just think it's because there's so many moving parts within a community, right? It's really hard to quantify because you've got not just the cost of creating the campaign, running the campaign, the ad cost of the campaign, then you've also got the sales team time and what does that cost? And then you've got sometimes commission-based structure on top of that. And then you have to measure all of that. But then there's also other people who give tours and other people who might be involved in that whole process from lead to lease. And then are all those being calculated in too? So it becomes pretty complex pretty fast. And I think a lot of vendors, they try to simplify as just, here's what it costs you to run the campaign. Here are the conversions that you got. Here's your cost of acquisitions. There's a lot more that goes into it in the middle there that they're not even a part of. So they're not thinking about it.
And that's not even to mention, like, is that including my time that I'm investing in this? Am I on my calls with all of our vendors? Is that included in this? Like, where does it end? I guess becomes the question, right? Like, how deep do you want to go in it? If you're just looking at, digital advertising, I could probably give that to you with confidence. Like, this is that cost. But in all the other areas, it gets real dicey. And I know people love it, and I love data too. I wish I knew a way to do that, but yeah.
Well, what makes sense for you? I mean, like, if you're in that position, if you are in a position of making critical decisions based on the data and based on what you're seeing within the campaigns and how successful they are, do you think factoring all of those other components into that cost is worth the time that it would take, or just looking at, here's the campaign we ran, here's what it cost us to run the campaign, here are the results we got, here's our acquisition costs or our cost per move-in for that campaign? Does it make sense to just keep it that simple?
Yeah, I think, from my perspective, I think keeping it that simple is the way to go on this. I think, when you start to factor in all the human resources that are involved in these things, I think that's where, I think to a certain degree, folks want to see that in there because it is a cost we're incurring. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But, I think it becomes too complicated at that point. And I think if we can just stick to the campaign, what we paid for the campaign, whatever that is, it could be online, it could be in person, it could be events that we did, things like that. Those are things that I think are hard costs that we can easily kind of come up with and figure out, acquisition costs from that.
Yeah.
But very often, we start going down a rabbit hole because folks want more and more and more. And they're like, well, what about this? Well, what about this? Like, let's keep it simple.
Yeah. I agree. I think my advice to providers, I think, would be to keep it simple, just because there's costs of running the campaign. So you've got the hard costs that you can actually measure, but then you've got your sunk costs, which you have to have this staff. You already have this staff. You're already paying them to try to measure and weigh the time that they've spent specifically on this campaign. That means then they have to track their time for this specific campaign. It would just get crazy. So I think just keeping the hard costs, and then everything else is just kind of like the cost of doing business separate from that. I think it makes it measurable, and you can kind of scale it and understand what's working and what's not.
No, yeah. I definitely agree. I'm not one to complicate things, so the simpler it can be, the better.
I can tell by your spreadsheet. So
that's important information.
Yeah. What are the key elements of a successful digital marketing campaign, and how do you determine if a campaign is resonating with your audience?
Yeah. So data, right? Like it just comes down to that data. And it's not just, one metric, like who clicked on it. That doesn't tell you the whole story. Kind of what happened after the click. Maybe it was an accidental click. Who knows? And so as we're measuring the success of campaigns, it's important for me too, really to try, split testing, A/B testing, try different things, see what's working, what's resonating, but also just kind of really figure out, don't base it all on one thing. You can't. You have to look at kind of the big picture, the whole entire picture of what's happening. And it could be that maybe the content that we put out, it went out on the wrong, ad network, or it went out on the wrong, social media network, whatever the case may be. So there's just so much in marketing that you can't just you got to take the blinders off. And I think a lot of folks get these blinders on and they want to focus and harp on like one data metric, and it doesn't work that way. And that's something that I experienced, sitting on the vendor side, in digital marketing is my clients would harp on one metric. And I can tell you, none of them harped on the same metric. They were all over the board. And so it was important for me to understand what it is, like on the next strategy call, what they were going to want to talk about. And I always knew, this one's going to want to talk about the click-through rate. This one's going to want to talk about, the cost per click. So, getting folks to understand that this is not a one metric deal. You got to look holistically at everything, see how everything's performing. Make sure you're doing that A/B split testing. You cannot run one singular strategy, one single content, and be like, well, you're getting a lot of clicks, so I think it's working. Well, maybe there's something that could work better. And so that's something that we really try very hard to do, is make sure that we're putting different ads, different content in front of different folks and see how it's resonating. And then we expand on it really, really quickly. I think that becomes an issue too, at times, is that folks will look at one singular metric and they'll be like, hey, this is running really well. A is running really well. We're going to kill B, and we're just going to run with it for the rest of the year because it's just done so well. And then they don't look at it again. And it's just like, that could tank the next month. You just don't know. You don't know what's happening in people's lives. You don't know, we can be pretty good predictors of what's going to happen kind of out in the general environment, right,
Mm-hmm.
in the community. But there's so many different things and variables at play here that, kind of going back to that data, taking a holistic approach, and then really just trying to figure out, not being afraid to pivot when and if needed. And in the world of marketing, that's going to be more often than not.
Well, I think this industry in general, I mean, you can look at the historic trends. I know, at least for us, like we have one client we've been working with for 10 years, and I can tell you every single year, the week before Thanksgiving is the slowest week for lead generation, without a doubt. And the week after Thanksgiving is the highest week of lead generation because everybody's had dinner with grandma or grandpa or mom or dad, and they're like, well, there seems like there's a little bit of cognitive decline. Maybe we need to start talking to some providers and see what our options are. So it's interesting how that is the case, but the data definitely kind of like leads the way. I think that marketing is a science. And I think as a science, you have variables and you have a constant. And so I think what a lot of people end up doing in marketing is they try to change too many things all at once, and they don't allow a campaign to actually sit and mature and then maybe shift one thing at a time or two things at a time at most. If you change too many things at once, you don't really ever know what's working. So how, in your experience, do you manage that within the organization? Do you find that you're the one that's, let's slow down, let's just keep things as is and just change one or two things here and there? Or is everybody on board with following that process?
I would say, we do have certain folks who want to change a whole bunch of stuff all at the same time. And yeah, it's my responsibility to kind of take a step back and help them understand what that could mean for the campaign. And it doesn't always mean negative results, but, you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And, we make a lot of educated decisions in marketing and strategic decisions based on the data that we have. But when you're talking about an entire strategy, you got to make sure that you're not doing too much all at once, because that could really negatively affect the campaign, the strategy that you're trying to run. But I think for us, one of the big things too is making sure that all of this is cohesive across, the messaging and the content is cohesive across all the platforms that you're engaged in. So, if you're running Google ads, you're running, paid search, you're running meta ads, you got to make sure that the messaging is cohesive kind of across all of them. And I think, sometimes what can happen is that if you start to change too many things, you can forget about what your messaging was over here. And now the messaging is not cohesive anymore. So that's definitely another piece to it that we can't lose sight of when we're kind of trying to make those big changes. And strategizing these things. And, I know, marketing plans and business plans tend to be something that, get under our skin sometimes, and we feel like we're doing them way too often. But that's a huge piece of what we do, is making sure that we've planned this stuff out. And sometimes it gets under the skin of our communities, because they're like, why are you looking so far ahead? It's like, because I got to get
Can
this
we just do this for now, please?
Yeah, I called you to ask you about this afternoon.
Yeah.
But no, it's really important to make sure that we understand, and that the marketing team understands, where we're going, and how we're going to communicate a unified message across all platforms, that doesn't get confusing for your audience, because that happens too. You've got messaging all over the place, and the consumer just has no idea, so they're going to throw up their hands and they're going to go to the next provider that has a more unified message.
I think that was a really important point, what you said too about you don't know what you don't know. And I think that's kind of the heart of what comes with marketing, because data in and of itself is inherently flawed, in my opinion, because you're making future decisions based on past data. And so it's only predictive at best. Based on this data set that I have over this period of time, I'm going to make an assumption that this is going to happen moving forward. But we don't know. We can make assumptions, but we don't know. So it's never an exact science. And that's why it's always a moving target, and we have to be willing to pivot. We have to split test. We have to, make these micro changes to things sometimes, just to see what kind of shifts the audience or engagement on things without making too many changes too fast. So, yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes it's not content. I know we've talked a lot about the content, but sometimes the audience and their perspective is changing. Maybe they saw something on the news last night and it's just totally turned them away from clicking on any of our ads. Who knows? There's a lot of variables in marketing, and so we just try to do the best that we can with the data that we have. And yeah, it's historic data, the best we have.
You being in the digital marketing space and being trained in digital marketing, I mean, how do you keep up with the rapidly changing digital market? And then how do you keep your team and leadership open to the emerging tools and technology that drive engagement and growth?
Yeah, for me, I would say the one way that I really do stay on top of technology at this stage in the game is I do pay attention to all the cold emails that I get. And, I know it's a pain, but that is really one way that I've learned about a lot of new products out there, surprisingly. And, yes, I get targeted with ads for this stuff all the time. But, also just making sure that any webinar, training, seminars that have to do with marketing or senior living in general. I mean, I'm still a nursing home administrator, so I still want to know all the facets and aspects of what we're doing, because it may impact me in my role. Who knows? Or give me some ideas of how we can do things a little bit differently to get better results. So, it's super important for me to make sure that I'm staying kind of on top of my game, because no one in the company is going to do it for me. So I've got to make sure that I'm getting my own education in that. I'll be honest with you, Jerry, this is something that I talked about during the interview process, was what resources am I going to have to continue to educate myself?
That's a great question.
That I stay on top of my game. And then when it comes to the teams, and we touched on this earlier a bit too, is you got to make sure that they understand what's happening. They don't have to understand all of it. They don't have to understand how to run the ads, and what's happening with the targeting and all of this stuff. But it is important for the teams to understand kind of the basics around what it is that we're doing. And so giving them, little tidbits here and there is kind of my methodology, because if not, you're going to get this glazed over look. And that not only goes for our community teams, but I'll tell you, it can happen with, higher level executives who have a ton of stuff on their plate. They're not interested in all these, different metrics and data points that I'm going to try to point out to them, and all these new products. They're just like, you know what, you've got this, you go figure it out, and you just come to us to be like, what's the decision? Are we going to move forward with this? How are we going to measure the result? And then how quickly can we get out of that kind of agreement? And so that's something that I focus really hard on with our vendors too, especially with this day and age of things moving as fast as they do and as quickly as they do. I cannot engage with a vendor for an exorbitantly long contract period. I don't feel comfortable with it. Who knows if the next great thing is going to come right around the corner.
It's true.
After I signed this contract. So it's even down to those things of making sure that I don't sign contracts that are going to bind me and tie my hands for an extended period of time.
There's a lot to consider in that position for sure. I think the last marketing question that I have for you is just around reputation management. So you've worked with various digital firms to elevate brand presence. What are some best practices you recommend to maintain a strong online reputation for senior living communities?
Yeah, another great question. So this is something that, again, we struggled with early on, but we have wrapped our hands around. I think, when it comes to online presence, reputation is a huge motivating factor to whether people are going to reach out to you or they're not going to reach out to you. And so, making sure that you have reviews, is going to be key. Make sure you got reviews. And, sometimes with rebranding and things like that, that gets, kind of tossed to the wayside, but you gotta level up and you gotta bring it to the next level. Even on the rebrand, which, we experience from time to time too. So making sure that we're soliciting those reviews. So we use comment cards. We've got Google review cards with a QR code on it. We just try to make it as easy as possible on, our family members, our residents, to be able to write a review. Please, under no circumstances, anyone out there, please do not have your employees writing reviews. Don't write reviews yourself for your company. Google will end up taking them down if they get wind of it. I promise you that. So please make sure that you're not doing that. But please make sure that anyone who brings you a comment, positive feedback, make sure that you're encouraging them to write the reviews. In addition to that, with one of our vendors, we also deploy regular surveys to, folks that have toured, folks that move in, folks that move out, and then on regular as well, to make sure that they're out there leaving us great reviews and that we're getting good feedback too, right? It may not be that we did, a great job with this particular family member. Maybe they wanted, steak for dinner every night and we couldn't do it. So, it's making sure that we kind of stay on top of that so that they don't get ahead of us and start writing reviews. Just making sure that we kind of keep their feedback top of mind as we go forward.
That's smart, proactive, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And really the biggest thing is responding to everything. Good, bad, indifferent. If there's no
I was going to ask you about that, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Respond to everything. I get a positive review for one of our properties and we're responding. Same day in most cases, sometimes within the hour. I want to do it on positive ones, certainly on negative ones. Do not just leave those and not respond. You got to show that we're empathetic, because we are, that we want to do the right thing, and give them an avenue to reach out to you outside of the review network. And please don't ever argue with them. That is not the place.
That's the worst.
That is not the place to do it.
Yeah.
Just be very empathetic to their situation, sympathetic to how they're feeling, and just make sure that we're responding to that. So, yeah, responding to everything and then doing everything that we can to get more reviews is the way to go. And if, there are some instances where you may be able to get a review removed for various reasons, but that's up to Google, and that's nothing that you can control. So you can't count on that. Even if it's something so very egregious, like there's nothing that you can do. You can report it, and then it's up to Google from there, but make sure you're responding, and then get more reviews, and we just drive it down to oblivion, hopefully.
We've had some clients who've kind of had this approach with negative reviews where they don't want to reply to them because they feel like if they reply, they're basically admitting culpability. And, my argument to that is always that, well, nobody's perfect. And even if the review, like you were saying, is like egregious or like it's a false claim or something like that, you can usually create some type of response to it and then give them the opportunity to then reach out to the community. And hopefully they take it, but if not, then you work hard to get more positive reviews to push that down, because they're shown in a timeline anyways, where if that negative review is left and then you have 10 positive reviews on top of it, the chances that somebody's even going to see that are pretty slim. But you can flag negative reviews, but then you can also appeal negative reviews as well. So if you do have someone who left like an egregious review of some kind, and this is just for all you senior living providers out there, you do have ways to appeal it. You can actually present documentation to Google and show them exactly, like, if you have proof that whatever this person is claiming absolutely did not happen, they will consider that information. Other platforms like Yelp, they will not get involved with factual disputes. So unless somebody's, like a manager's name is used in the review, there's really no way to get rid of it in most cases. So it's definitely a fine line and a little dance that you have to do with the review platforms. But yeah, thank you for sharing that.
That Google Business Profile is so important. And so we just want to make sure that it's as clean and looking good as we possibly can within our control.
Absolutely. So are there any exciting projects that you're working on with Alta Senior Living that our audience should keep an eye out for?
Oh my God, so much. I feel like it never ends. So, right now I'm working on a few things that will enhance kind of our resident experience and build stronger connections. I think one of the things that, we can do a better job of is really kind of highlighting our residents and who they have been and who they've been, maybe what great accomplishments they've had over the course of their life. But it allows our audience to be able to see that there are people like them within our communities. So that's another way. And we really do try to use that along with the reviews and the testimonials to make sure that we keep folks coming back for more. But that's one thing. So, we're going to blow that out of the water. So stay tuned for that. And next year, we've got some great ideas to get that off and running. And then really, the other big thing that I think we had some room for improvement on was kind of our lead nurturing. Such an important part of what we do, especially in the digital world. I think people are getting more comfortable with giving us their information, but still not so comfortable to pick up the phone and answer us once we reach out. So making sure that we're continuing to give them information that they're actually looking for. So this kind of goes back to, time on page, who's on the website, how long, what pages they're looking at, how long they're looking at them. And really kind of tailoring that in the lead nurturing to exactly what it is that they're looking for. So there's not this one size kind of fits all approach to that. So if they want to know more about our events and activities going on and the life enrichment in the community, we can get them that information. If they want to know more about health and wellness and kind of that area of the community, then we target them with that information. So it's really kind of this more personalized, customized approach. But yeah, those are the two big ones that are taking up most of the time in my day these days.
That's exciting. That'll be fun to refine that over time. So
yeah, for sure.
I'm excited to see how that goes. And then finally, how can our audience stay connected with you and learn more about your work in senior living marketing?
Yeah, I love to stay connected with folks and share insights. So probably the easiest way at this point in time is through LinkedIn. I pretty much respond to everyone on there who reaches out to me, no matter what it's about. But no matter what it is, if you just want to reach out and brainstorm an idea or, get my thoughts or experience with something, more than happy to give it to you. But in addition to that, if you want to know about all the new and great things that we've got going on, you can always check out our website, which is altasenior.com. And yeah, we got links to all of our communities there and we keep them up to date. That is my job to they stay up to date, and we're getting folks the information that they want and need. So yeah, those are the two easiest ways to reach out to me, and I definitely encourage it because I like to stay on my game too.
Cool. Awesome. Well, we'll make sure we put all your links to your profile and to Alta in the show notes. So as we wrap up today's episode, I want to thank you, Jason Nieves, for joining us and sharing your expertise on strategic marketing, occupancy growth, and brand management in senior living. Your insights are a powerful reminder of the impact that thoughtful, data-driven marketing can have on senior living communities. So if you want to stay connected with Jason and learn more about his work, follow him on LinkedIn, and we've included those links in the show notes. So as always, we hope you found this episode insightful and inspiring. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform and stay tuned for more episodes where we continue to explore the dynamic world of senior living marketing and sales. Also, remember that From Leads to Leases isn't just an audio experience, we're a video podcast. So if you want to see the video versions of our episodes like the one here with Jason, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube or Spotify channels. I'm Jerry Vinci, CEO of CCR Growth. Thank you for joining us on From Leads to Leases, where we're giving you all these great senior living industry insights for free and asking nothing in return other than for you to like, subscribe, and share this episode with anyone who might find it useful. I'm truly grateful for your time and attention. Until next time, lead with strategy and with heart. Chat with you again soon. Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thanks for listening to From Leads to Leases. Are you ready to fill your rooms faster and increase occupancy? Visit ccrgrowth.com to learn about our Senior Growth Innovation Suite, a proven system to generate highly qualified, tour-ready leads, accelerate sales, and reduce acquisition costs. Let's connect and turn your challenges into opportunities. See you next time.